In this video, we'll go ahead and go through creating a patient claim and adding the necessary information to it. The patient's claim, also sometimes referred to as a patient's case, holds all the pertinent information related to a patient's injury and their insurance information, such as the carrier, their insurance ID, their diagnosis codes, and so forth. Also located in here is where a lot of information will be entered that is necessary to bill out for the claim. In the previous video, we went ahead and created Ben as a patient and added him to the system. Now we'll go ahead and add a claim to that patient. This way we can create Ben as a patient in the system and create multiple patient claims attached to the patient instead of creating the same patient over and over again. Let's go ahead and get started by clicking the Next button. And here we can see the primary responsible phrase will appear, indicating the kinds of information we'll be entering shortly. Go ahead and click Next again. Here we have the carrier and policy code. This is the patient's carrier and the policy associated with that carrier that will determine the particular breakdown of patient versus carrier responsibility when certain services are charged. Now, Ben's actually a Medicare patient, so we're going to go ahead and change that before we continue. To do so, we'll go ahead and click these binoculars here, and that'll bring up the list of carriers in the program. From here, I'll just go ahead and click in the carrier name column and type in Medi, MDI, and here we can see that I have my Medicare options. Now, we see that a lot of these carriers get repeated, and that's not because we've entered them in more than once, but because they have multiple policies attached to them, as indicated over here in the right under the column that says policy name. I'm going to go ahead and select this particular policy for Medicare for this patient. We can see that the carrier name and policy code have changed. Go ahead and click Next. Here we can enter an auto policy if we need to, in case this is an auto accident. Click Next. Here we have the billing start date. Now what happens is if you leave this blank, TPS will assume that all services entered for the claim are within the coverage time for this carrier and will be billed out regardless. If I were to enter a date in here, such as today's date or a couple months ago, any services entered in before that date will be considered outside of the coverage time and will not be billed by the program. So if you don't need a specific billing start date, leave this blank, otherwise put one in. Click Next. Here we have the relation to the insured. This is the relationship to the subscriber, whoever is actually paying the carrier for the services. Most often we have an option of self, although sometimes you can select spouse, child, or any number of these other options down here. Click Next. If you've selected self, the information will pull from the patient file and fill out automatically. Similarly, if you've selected spouse and entered spousal information in the patient's information screen, it'll fill that information out automatically as well. Since we selected self, Ben's information will simply fill itself out. Here we see address, second address, city, state, zip, home, work, birth date, social security number, and gender. Clicking Next again, over at the top right we have the claim type. Claim types used for billing purposes and certain specialized reports within TPS. If I click this drop down, we can see a list of options to select a certain claim type. The EB next to some of these in parentheses indicates electronic billing. I'll go ahead and scroll down and find this Medicare Part B, select that, and then I'll go ahead and click Next. Here we have coverage type. Coverage type is what goes in that top block on the HCFA form in the top left, indicating what kind of coverage the primary insurance is. For now, we'll go ahead and leave it as Medicare. Note this is also used in certain forms of electronic billing. Click Next. Here we have the insured ID and patient ID. Patient ID will only be available if the relationship is not self. In this case it is, so we can't enter any information here. Go ahead and enter in the insurance ID for this particular patient. And click Next. Here we have a policy group number / Medicaid number if applicable. Insurance plan name if one needs to be entered. The employer for this patient or the school that they attend. For instance, if the patient attended a middle school, you could type it in here. Click Next. Here we have a field where we can enter the insurance card number or the payer claim office number or OCNA number. Click Next. If applicable, enter the CHAMPUS stat and grade here, and the branch of the CHAMPUS if applicable. If you have an insurance card start date, you can enter that information here. And then the end date. Go ahead and click Next. Now here in the bottom left, we have a checkbox that says Accept Assignment. If you'll be accepting assignment and the checks will be coming to your office instead of going to the patient from the insurance company, please check this box off here. We'll go ahead and do that for now. Click Next. Here we have the checkbox indicating this insurance is primary to Medicare. Basically, you'll want to check this off if you have a primary responsible carrier who is not Medicare, but the secondary is. Click Next. Here we have the option to specifically denote whether we want this patient claim to print a fee slip from the schedule or not. Now you had the option earlier to say whether you wanted all your patients to have fee slips or not, but here we can decide on an individual patient claim basis whether we want them to have fee slips printed. We're going to go ahead and leave that blank for now, and then click Next. Down here we have the Print SOAP in Documenter. We can use the setting in the carrier file, or we can determine from here in the patient claim whether we want to print the SOAP in Documenter. Documenter is our note-taking software separate from TPS and is not covered in these videos. Over here on the right we can see two buttons have appeared. The one on the left says Export Patient Summary to CCR, with a button that says Export. This particular button pertains to the EHR Meaningful Use module and has gone over in the videos pertaining to the EHR Meaningful Use module. To the right of that we have the Print Patient/Claim Data. If we were to click this button, it would allow us to print the patient data along with the patient's claim data that you've entered into the program. Go ahead and click Next. And we'll move on to the second tab at the top here that says General. First thing we have here is the claim name. This is the name of the claim within the program and is simply used to distinguish claims between each other within TPS. This does not go out on any billing information. Initially generated, the first claim will say Claim 1, and then the insurance carrier attached to that particular claim. We can see here that we have a little bit left over from before where it said 100% carrier pay. Then it went ahead and added Medicare after we changed it. We'll go ahead and edit that by highlighting the selected information and just typing in Medicare because that's all this patient is now. You'll notice that the claim name has not changed at the top here, however, when I click Next. This is because the information needs to be closed out to save, and once we've closed out the patient claim and reopen it, the information up here will now reflect Claim 1, Medicare. Here we have the claim originated date. This is the date that the claim or case is originated. We can go ahead and type in a date, such as 04/02/2010, or select this calendar button here, and a little calendar will pop up, and we can go ahead and go through the months and the years with these buttons respectively, and select different days. Go ahead and click Next. Here we have the date of injury, if applicable. Sometimes this matches the claim origination date, sometimes it doesn't. For now, we'll go ahead and just put in the same date. Click Next. Here we have the NUCC Box 14 Qual, short for qualifier. This allows you to enter information on the newly revised HCFA form where we have the label of the NUCC Box 14 Qual. NUCC stands for National Uniform Claim Committee, and starting in 2014, the HCFA forms will reflect these changes made by the NUCC. If you need to fill out information pertaining to this particular box or block, go ahead and fill it out here, and it'll appear there when you print out your HCFA forms. Go ahead and click Next. Here we have a field to enter the similar illness date. If the patient has such information, go ahead and fill it out here. Click Next. Here we have the NUCC Box 15 qualifier. This is for an other date field, and if necessary, go ahead and fill out the qualifier information here. Then click Next. Here we can type in injury description for the patient's injury. I'll just go ahead and type in throughout lower back. Not very technical, but it gets the job done. Here you can type in the place of injury. This indicates where the patient was hurt, such as work. Go ahead and type in work here, and then I'll go ahead and click Next. Here we have a patient's major complaint, pain. Click Next. Here we have whether the injury is acute or chronic. Here we can put in the insurance claim number. If you have several patients in the office who were injured in the same automobile accident, you can put the group claim number in here and any of those patient claims who have also in that same accident, and it will go ahead and link those patients together. Click Next. Here we fill out information for prior authorization number, authorized number of visits, and the date authorization goes to. Click Next. Here we have the severity of the condition, such as moderate. Click Next. Subluxation level, marital status for the patient. This does go on the billing forms. Here we have employment status, employed, full-time student, part-time student. More can be added if necessary. Here we have unable to work dates to and from, if the patient can't work for a certain reason and needs to be recorded here. If the patient was hospitalized and that information needs to be recorded, we can enter that date and time for the from and to sections right here. Click Next. If any lab charges were assessed, we can enter those here, and then have a checkbox here if the lab work was done outside the office. Click Next. Up here we have condition related to box with a few options. Here we have another party responsible. Then we have employment, other accident, and then auto accident. Here we can enter the ambulatory patient group if applicable. And if it's an auto accident or other accident, we can enter the state the patient was injured in. Here we have a list of all the state codes. Click Next. If you need a country code, you can put that here too. Here we have the claim status for the patient. We have a checkbox here with the bold letters that say active claim. This determines whether the patient's claim is inactive or active. If a patient's claim is inactive, when you go to schedule patients in the appointment book, they will not appear in the list of available patients. However, you will still be able to bill out to that patient and make payments on that patient's claim if necessary. This isn't some sort of archiving feature, it simply allows you to put them aside when scheduling so you don't accidentally schedule a patient who isn't going to come in anyway. Click Next. Here are the patient's claim condition. All goals met, drop out, no goals met, or partial goals met. Click Next. Here we have the discharge date if you have one. And then clicking Next one more time fills out the rest of information for all the NUCC boxes that are coming out on the new claim form in 2014. A lot of changes were made to the CMS 1500 form by the NUCC. Many boxes and blocks from before, which had specific titles for specific information, has simply been replaced with the phrase NUCC box and then the number and or letter associated with it. Here you can enter information or enter the check mark for yes or no that is associated with this particular box or block on the new CMS form. For instance, if I needed to enter information into NUCC box 10D, I would put that information here. If signature is on file for NUCC box 12 and 13, we could check that here and here. Basically, if you need information in any one of these sections of the claim form, simply type it in here and it will appear there. Go ahead and click Next. Here we're on to the third tab of the patient claim, the Visit Info/Miscellaneous tab. Here in the top left we have the Managed Care section that starts off with the insurance coverage. Here we can enter a certain amount that the patient is allowed to have covered by the carrier and the amount used. For instance, perhaps their policy allows for $5,000 yearly. They have none used yet, so this remains $0. As the patient is charged services and the carrier portion is increased, this amount will increase from 0 to $5,000 once that limit is met, at which point the patient will owe all money afterwards, until the policy resets the next year. Here we can click Next. Similarly, we have the insurance deductible. Patient must pay $500 before coverage will start. As charges are made against the patient within the system, this amount will increase until it reaches $500, at which point the insurance coverage will kick in. Click Next. Here we have the deductible rollover month. Defaults to January, but if they have a specific rollover month that needs to be set here, you can do so via the drop-down, like so. Go ahead and click Next. Here we have the per visit copay amount. If the patient has a copay for every visit, you can enter that here. Click Next. Here we have the visit section of the Visit Info tab. Here we have the MTD or month to date, the YTD or year to date, and total visits. As the patient comes into the office and they're assigned services, this number will increase, and this number will increase for the year currently in, and this number will increase for the month. Starting over next month, this will go back to 0. Starting over next year, this will go back to 0. And the total will continue to increase as the patient comes in for visits. Number in series by default matches the total number of visits. However, this can be changed and used for specific reasons within your own office. For instance, if you need to track every 10 visits, you can do so here by resetting this to 0 every time they've reached 10 visits. Click Next. Here we have the on-visit number fields and a display this message field. As we've discussed before and we'll discuss in further detail later, TPS is a very robust messaging system, some of which can be automated depending on certain criteria. This on-visit number, when a certain visit is reached, will display a certain message. So if I put a 5 in here, and I could type in some text in here, and on the 5th visit, a message will display pertaining to this patient for that visit on the month to date. Now you want to note that if you want to have a message appear, for instance on a 10th visit, you want to put in a 9 here. That way when the patient is charged the service and the visit is calculated, the next time they come in for the 10th visit, the message will display on their appointment book. So I'll put a 9 in here, and I'll type patient needs exams. Now you can put in whatever you want here. This is very flexible, and you can do this for the year-to-date and total sections as well. Click Next. Here we have the max number of visits. This is the max number of visits allowed for the patient's claim, and once reached, will stop the insurance coverage and also generate a message letting you know that the patient has reached their maximum number of visits. Click Next. Here you have the last exam date and their next exam date, the last x-ray date, next x-ray date, and last report and next report date. These three fields can be automatically updated by adding services with a production category of exam, x-ray, or report specifically. When you add a service with one of these production categories, this date will populate with that date of service. And then depending on information in their carrier screen, as we discussed before, the next date will appear 30, 60, 45, or however many days later you've set. This allows you to come to the patient's claim and have a fairly good grasp on when their last exam was and when their next one needs to be done. Same going for x-rays and reports. Go ahead and click Next. Down here in the bottom left, we can assign an attorney if necessary. We can do so by clicking the binoculars and selecting any one of the attorneys in our list. If you find you don't need an attorney, but you filled one out, simply click the binoculars and then click the cancel button, and the attorney will remove itself from here. Go ahead and click Next again. Here we can add a referring physician if necessary. Like before, we'll click the binoculars and select from our list of physicians. Clicking Next, we can fill out specific information about this referring physician, such as their ID number type. Here we have a list of various numbers that we can choose from, the actual ID number, and a secondary type ID. If the physician has this information stored within their actual referring physician file that we set up earlier in the videos, this information will automatically fill out here, depending on which one you select from the dropdown. Click Next. The date the patient was referred can be filled out here. The state the physician is. Here we have information that goes in the NUCC Box 17 qualifier section of the new CMS form. Click Next. If you have a supervising referred physician, you can select them from your list of referred physicians. Very similar to the section above that we just discussed. Here we have various billing settings for the particular patient's claim. If the patient has a secondary or tertiary carrier, but you don't want to bill them from TPS, you can go ahead and leave this checkbox blank. However, if you do want to bill the secondary and collect money off of them, you can go ahead and check it here. Click Next. Here we have an option whether or not we want to send patient statements to this patient. If checked, this will send and generate patient statements to the patient, based on the charges that you've rendered for the patient instead of the carrier. Click Next. Here we have bill attorney instead of primary carrier if the attorney is the person who needs to be billed instead of the carrier. Patient refuses to assign benefits, where they refuse to have the insurer pay the provider directly. Click Next. Here we have also bills carrier for, and a list of various options we can choose. Starting at the top left over here, we have all services greater than $0. Now in TPS, you can go ahead and charge your patient, or you can charge the carrier, or a combination of the two for a particular service. If you need to charge the patient for whatever reason, but still bill the carrier, select this checkbox, and the carrier will be billed all patient services as well, because it's billing out for any services greater than $0. This applies as well for the inventory one down here. If you need to bill the carrier specific charges that actually don't have any sort of amount to them, such as G-codes, check this box here for no charge services. Same goes for fully adjusted and discounted services. Down here we have the option to select sales tax to also bill the carrier for, if applicable. Go ahead and click Next.